Hello and welcome to Soul Elevation. Sorry if you just heard something. Um, Hello and welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and today is Monday, September 29th, 2025. I want to talk about the potential for a dark agenda. And if there are dark forces that are working behind the scenes that are trying to manipulate us, trying to siphon from us. And this is something that you may have heard me talk about before. And I have complicated feelings about this because I know enough to know that there are concentrated efforts happening behind the scenes to pit humanity against each other, to pit the masses so that it's us versus them, and that really helps the elite, the people, the puppet masters who are not the people who are at the forefront. They're not the faces and the names that we know in terms of elected officials or media personalities or all of these ways that we may point the finger at people and say, okay, this is the person or the group of people who are behind the oppression and who are benefiting from the these agendas. That's one layer, but then you go to another layer behind that. I've shared before that it's easy to become disempowered when you start to look into this stuff. There really are these organizations, there really are these ways, these people, these groups who are doing what they can to suppress information in order to control humanity. And they're in all these different industries, they're behind the government, no matter which party that you're in, that's just an illusion. They're behind the scenes, there are these shadow figures. But I was listening to this really interesting discussion recently that really resonated with me and helped to bring about that empowerment that I'm always looking for. Because and when we are going down these, they're often called rabbit holes, where you start to look and peel the onion and to say, okay, well, who's behind that? Okay, well, that's connected to that. And wait a minute. So if the media is connected to pharma and the people behind that have vested interests in both of them, then it makes sense that the messaging that we're getting is pro medicine, it's pro they're just it's not hard to connect the dots the more you look into it, and the more that you see that there are concentrated efforts and there are psychological efforts. There are things called psy-ops that are deliberate things happening within the government. They're declassified programs within the CIA where there have been psychological operations, also called psy-ops, that are deliberately controlling and manipulating the information and the way that people behave because of the information that comes out. Anyway, all of that to say that I have been guesting on a lot of podcasts recently. I've been on some amazing podcasts. Actually, if you're on YouTube, or you can go onto YouTube on my channel, Soul Elevation Podcast, you can see there's a featured appearances section there, and I've been loading up all of these interviews where I've been interviewed. And I highly recommend that you check out these interviews for a few reasons. One is because these are great podcasts that if you like the content, if you like getting high vibe content that's going to expand your consciousness, you're going to love these hosts, these podcast hosts. They're doing really great work to bring out new perspectives and stretch your awareness. So I know you're going to get a lot out of it. So please check those out. And the other piece to it, which I've talked about before, is that the more that we're engaging with high vibe content like what you're watching right now, what other episodes you can find on Soul Elevation, but also the episodes that these hosts are putting out. You're telling the algorithm not only what you want to see more of, so that you have more selection of things that are going to nurture your your spiritual evolution, but also for other people. Because if you're engaging in more and more high vibe content, then the algorithm will start to see, oh, more people are liking this. This is something that it's valuable for the company of YouTube or of Apple Podcasts or whatever it is. You know how these algorithms work. They're going, okay, what are people paying attention to? So that's another reason that I would love for you to check out these featured appearances on my Soul Elevation, so that you can see more people who are doing great work out there to provide more high vibe content. So anyway, I will be interviewed by this podcast called The Fifth Dimension, and right now I'm blanking on his name. It's like, I think it's Evan McDermott, maybe. But I've been listening to episodes of his on The Fifth Dimension, and I'll try to remember to put a link to this one episode that I'm referring to here, because I loved what they started to talk about in terms of, I think he asked his guest, do you feel that you've gotten to the bottom of the rabbit hole? Have you found the end of the rabbit hole? And clearly this guy has been doing a lot of research in terms of like how things are connected and what's happening behind the scenes, and how we're being manipulated, and how it's all structured. And he kind of laughed and he was like, well, I don't know that there is a bottom of the rabbit hole or an end to the rabbit hole. I don't know that there gets to a point where you've connected all the dots, because I think we give too much credit to these dark agendas. And I really resonated with what he was saying, because the more research I've done, the more I start to think that this is a really highly organized, deliberate, and sophisticated machine, agenda, and that is, I kind of start to see it as like flawless. And one of the points that he made, and there was another one that I synchronistically listened to that kind of reemphasized this point too from a different angle, where it's like, I think we give them too much credit. We think that they are much more sophisticated than they are, that they're much more powerful than they are. And he also was saying that he doesn't see it anymore as there being like the top of the pyramid. You know, so if you've ever seen like the pyramid structure, and it's like regular humans are kind of down at the bottom, and then you've got like corporations, and you've got the government, and then you've got this like secret elite up at the very top of the pyramid. And he was like, we kind of tend to see that there's like at the pinnacle, that there's one organized group that is wanting to do everything. And he was suggesting that those groups, that there's a lot of infighting happening, and there's a lot of like power plays where they're all kind of competing against each other. And I could see that. Um, but it reminded me of like when you lift a rock that's been in the ground for a long time, and you lift it and you see all of these bugs like scatter because suddenly there's light. Like they've been in all of this darkness, and they've been in the mud and the muck, and there's a whole ecosystem that relies on the darkness of that rock. And as soon as you lift it up, they all go crazy, and there's chaos and everything scatters. And that is kind of the image that comes to mind when I think about the times that we're in, because I was really grateful that I came across that episode where it helped me to see in a different light. Like, yes, there is sophistication, there is technology, there are concentrated efforts, but it's not flawless, and it's not all powerful. And that is the message that I need to keep hearing. I need to keep engaging with. And that is what I want to keep reinforcing as well, because that is the truth. As awakening beings of consciousness. We are the power. We are the power. We have the power within us. And when we come together, even if it's just in meditation, we strengthen that light. And so, as there is more light, so light is high vibrational frequency, it is coherent frequency. The more of that there is on this planet, then the more light there is on this planet. And then that accounts for that chaos that I feel we're experiencing across humanity. And it feels to me like there is there's this chaotic energy, but I feel that it is a reflection of kind of grasping at straws, where this dark force that they've had a playbook. So these organizations and the people behind them they've been on the scene for a long time. It surprises me when I start to see the history and that things have been put in place back in like the 1880s and before that across the globe, particularly in Europe, where that's when the wheels were starting to be set in motion by certain families. That blows my mind that it's been happening in that length of time, and the big world events that have happened that are direct result of the power plays that have been happening by these groups. And that does, when I start to go into that, it does make me think like, wow, what's next? And what else do they have up their sleeves? And it is so sophisticated. It's so smart. But we need to account for the fact that humanity is much, much different now than it was in the 1880s, and that it was in the 1930s, and that it was in the 1970s. All we keep from a consciousness perspective, we continue to elevate our consciousness, to expand our awareness, and we keep kind of more and more people are quote unquote waking up. And what does waking up mean? That can mean that they're starting to understand intellectually some of the things that I've been talking about in terms of the history, and that history isn't what we've been taught. There's a whole other history happening, and who's behind that, and how they play into current events. So there is that waking up. There is waking up to things happening in the medical industry. There are waking up to the way that, the government is run behind the scenes. There is waking up to spiritual truths and spiritual realities. All of those things are different ways that we wake up. But when we truly are working on elevating our frequency, on being able to hold that coherent field, and that means that we're able to stay in like our nervous system. If you want to go on the physical level, it means that the nervous system is able to stay stable amongst the chaos. And that may just feel like, oh, okay, well, that's good for me if I can stay calm when things start to fall apart. But your nervous system is a big part of how you radiate and how you interact with the energy field. So, what you're doing energetically, when you're able to be a stable force, you are able to help with the stability of the energy beyond yourself. And so, the people who you're connected with, the environment that you're connected with, it it's maybe it's hard to understand the reality of that. Maybe that sounds very etheric and esoteric, but it really is true, and it's so critical. And we have more and more people who are clearing out their own shadows. They're willing to look at their shadows. They're willing to accept themselves with love and wholeness. They're willing to forgive. They're willing to see others with compassion. They're willing to allow others to have their own opinions, to have the freedom to think differently than they do. All of these things are ways that we evolve as a human, as consciousness. The more people that are doing that, the more that energy gets, the stronger it gets. And the more that we're connecting to that, we are able to stabilize this field and create this coherence amongst the chaos. So we strengthen that light, that it really is this coherent, harmonic field that is all throughout this planet, all throughout creation, this stable, coherent, harmonic energy, this unified energy that uplifts everything, it uplifts everyone. And as it does that, the light shines on that chaos, the rock gets lifted, the the scurry bugs scurry around, and chaos ensues. And from that chaos, there isn't order. The order is happening through the cohesion and through that harmonic, through that ability for us to hold the field with calmness, with neutrality, with love, with forgiveness and compassion. And so we can undergo this breaking apart of that darkness. So the answer to the question that I posed at the beginning and in the title of the live that you're listening to right now, are there dark forces? Are they manipulating us? Are they controlling everything? They're trying. They are trying. And that is what is behind a lot of that chaos that we're seeing. But they're playing from an outdated playbook. They're using things that have worked for centuries, for decades too. But we keep evolving. We keep understanding ourselves as consciousness. We keep relating to ourselves as evolving beings, and we keep rising, and we keep unifying, we keep connecting. And that is where the power is. That is where change comes in. And the old playbook just doesn't it doesn't work against that. It works against humans who think they're separate, who are ready to fight against each other, who trust the authorities, who trust the mainstream, and they take the bait. That's who that works on. But more and more and more, we have people who want to think for themselves. We have people who want to unite. We have people who want to look past the differences of their neighbors, their friends, their families, who are willing to love and have open dialogue and not take offense, not be defensive. That we have evolving humans. And the more of that we have, truly the more unstoppable we are. We're absolutely unstoppable in that sense. So keep tuning into that truth within yourself. Keep holding that within yourself. Keep bravely looking at your own shadows, accepting the wholeness of who you are, mistakes and all. Everybody has their mistakes. Don't be afraid to look at the hard things, to get help if you need to. If you've been through a lot of trauma, get help. But let yourself experience the fullness of who you are, not expecting perfection. This is how we rise, my friends. It's with each of us. It's within each of us. So I encourage you, when you're in your meditation, really connect with your heart, with your soul, And then feel that so many people all over the world are doing the same thing. And we are connecting like this web in the ethers is being created, and this web is lighting up and it's helping everything to come into this harmonic, into harmony, into peace, into the next iteration of what is being birthed. And you're a part of it. And I bless you. I thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being with me as you engage with this material. And I will see you next time.